We thought, as we always do for these gatherings, that we would start with a prayer. And I have my prayer on my phone. But in the name of the Father, the Son, Holy Spirit, amen. So this is a prayer aimed at the world today. It's very brief. God our Father, we pray for our world today. We pray for peace and hope to abound. Many are affected by natural disasters, floods, droughts, and forest fires. Many are struggling with conflict, poverty, and the global food crisis. Lord, we pray for your provision, for your peace, and for protection. In Jesus' name, amen. Father, Son, Holy Spirit, amen. Tonight, our speaker is one of God's answers to that prayer because of the focus of her work. I want to welcome Katie Welle Clark, to our podium and to the Hill Murray Founders Speaker Series. Our series seeks the most interesting and timely thoughts and activities of Hill Murray grads and others to share their work, their goals, and their aspirations. Katie Welle graduated from Hill Murray in 1998. She went on to earn a bachelor's degree in nursing from Eau Claire, University of Wisconsin at Eau Claire, and her master's and doctorate in transcultural nursing from Augsburg University. Katie is also the recent recipient of the Father Greg Tolis Distinguished Service Award for Hill Murray grads. She's also recently named as a fellow in the Minnesota Association of Registered Nurses and as a representative to the National American Nurses Advocacy Institute. Katie worked for 8 years before coming to Augsburg at the U of M, in the medical center, in oncology, and in the intensive care units. She has also taught now for 17 years at Augsburg. She is chair of the Department of Nursing. She's also the executive director of the Augsburg Health Commons. Tonight, Katie will help us get to know her and her passions as she focuses on the unique model of healthcare she directs at Augsburg. It serves the homeless, poverty-stricken, and the socially marginalized. The model has been widely published and replicated within other universities. It has expanded to 5 different locations here within our region. These facilities that are part of this model that Katie has established have served over 150 recorded visits, as well as participation from 1,800 of her nursing students. I think Katie is doing the work that we've prayed for, and I'd like you to join me in welcoming Dr. Katie Clark.
Thank you so much for that introduction, and thank you so much for inviting me to be here today. And for so many of you who have been part of my lives, have been part of this work, have supported me, and I've met along the way being part of Hill Murray. So thank you so much. I might move around a little bit, so if you can't hear me, let me know. But I will use my teacher voice if I need to. So like the description talked about what's going to happen today, I'm really just going to talk about what the model of care is at the Health Commons and really kind of tell you some key learnings that our students have shared at Augsburg, share some stories of the voices of the people that we've cared for, and really kind of some lessons that I've learned. One thing that we kind of have to say now in higher ed in the political climate is, and especially since we're recording, that these opinions are of my own, but I do represent an institution. So we've kind of come into practice with that at our different institutions. But Augsburg is a place that I have been part of for now over 20 years, and a little bit about Augsburg. I'm sure you're all kind of familiar with it, but okay, tell me if you can hear me okay. But it's located in the urban core of Cedar Riverside, and right now we have one of the largest incoming bodies of students, which is really unique. Most universities are declining in enrollment, and we're increasing. So, and since I've been at Augsburg, our student body has been changing quite dramatically. So now the majority of our students are actually Muslim. We have many first generation students. And so we have been named the most ethnically diverse campus in the Midwest now. So, and that wasn't always how it's been. So some of the unique programs that have kind of surfaced because of the commitment, one thing about Augsburg is at one point we thought about leaving Minneapolis, and a lot of institutions did. And you'll hear a little bit more about this, but Augsburg really dove in and said, what does it mean to be an institution of higher ed? And does that mean we move to a place that's cheaper, safer, the parking is better, or do we reimagine what education can look like and stay in our roots and think about how we show up as neighbors and teach students how to do that long past their academic tenure? So we have programs like the Augsburg Family Scholars that help students who have come out of the foster care system. Step Up is the first recovery program at a college level in the whole entire country. So we have a lot of students who are part of that program. We have Campus Cupboard, which is a place where students can get free food. And it all kind of started with the ideals of a radical professor named Joel Torkinson. So this is a book that we wrote a few years ago, and it really helped me understand. I wrote this with the president of the university and another professor, and really looking at the history of our academic institution and how we really got involved with civic engagement, how we really started thinking about what does experiential learning look like, and how do we help students understand that they need to be a part of a healthy democratic way of life. And so he started HECUA. I don't know if anyone's heard of HECUA or the Center for Global Education and Experience, amongst other things. And so because of this, this has allowed us to also look into our history too, into maybe some of the wrongs that we have done as an institution. So this second book that kind of came out looked at, through economic and racial lens, what have we done as a university that maybe we should look back and reflect on so we do things differently in the future. So Augsburg is really unique in that way. So I did not start the Health Commons. The Health Commons actually started long before, well, I was born. Let's put it that way. But it started officially in 1992. And I think, thinking back around that time, what was happening in that time in the late 1980s. You can shout anything out. You can interrupt me at any time too. I'm super open to that. What was happening around that time? You guys can't answer. You know the answer. We had the beginnings of modern day homelessness. So we have people who are leaving mental health facilities. So I have faculty members that I used to work with who are working in public health who said, you know, all of a sudden somebody would come in and all of a sudden you have people with schizophrenia and bipolar and all these other issues saying, they got rid of my mental health facility and they told me I'm supposed to go to the public health department. What should I do? And they didn't know. They didn't know. So people were on the streets. You have the war on drugs. You have HIV/AIDS amongst crack epidemic and other things. So you have this modern day homelessness. So the question was, what do we do, not only as nurses, but as humans to respond to this call, this new crisis that we're seeing show up? And that really hasn't changed in Minneapolis much, has it? So a little bit thinking about the origin story of the Health Commons, this is an origin story, a little bit connecting it to me. So this is me in high school, but I loved being at Hill so much. I really did find a community where I felt like I could get uncomfortable. I could ask hard questions. I could think about what my passions are and what I wanted to do. This is a picture of Lance and Barb Carlson. So we lost a friend. We lost, I don't know if anybody knows the Carlsons, but Scott Carlson died when we were in high school, and that really impacted our class, and we were a very close class. But one thing that really made me transformed was, and I'm sorry if you've heard this before if you were at the award ceremony, but I said to my parents, hey, can I go to Mexico for spring break? And they're like, yes, you can. And I was super pumped. Actually, I was going to go with Christy Moorhead. And we were like, yes. And then my parents said, yeah, you're going with the religion teachers. So I ended up going with Dr. Bill Hudson, and we went to work in an orphanage in Reynosa, Mexico. And that trip is when I decided I wanted to become a nurse. And so really kind of helped me understand who I am and what my passions are and what my calling was. So from there, I went and worked at the U, and so I loved working there. I actually never thought I'd stop working at the U. I met my husband when I was there. He's also a nurse back there. And then I would save up all my PTO and I would go to other countries and volunteer. So there's a picture of me in Tanzania with my cousin, and a lot of the people there were Maasai, and they had left the children in the bush because they had either disabilities or they had been inflicted with HIV/AIDS. So we worked at an orphanage there. Here's the first one I ever went to, was in Peru. So I did a lot of those things. I went to Haiti after the earthquake. But I think one thing that was interesting during those times is we'd go there, we'd work really, really hard, and then we'd come back and we'd not know anything about what was going on there politically, or even what were their health care practices, and what were we not paying attention to? Was it sustainable, right? We worked really hard, but we just bring in our Western ideals onto people who maybe really didn't need those pills at that moment. They needed food. And so thinking about those systemic issues. So I was applied to go to nurse practitioner school and all set to go, and one of my friends was like, hey, you can go to Augsburg and you can travel and get your master's, right? I'm like, what? So I switched gears and I went to Augsburg, and this is my first immersion in Namibia, which Dr. Nelson here is going to be leading this year. And this really shook me. This was traveling with my professors, and there was 25 students. We were going into the bush where the San people are, where they had multi-drug resistant tuberculosis, and kind of understanding some of those issues and how they perpetuate. We went to Katatura, where there's still a high prevalence of HIV/AIDS. And I just was standing there, and my mentor and professor at the time, Cheryl Looney, and I said, why are we not doing anything? We need to be doing something. Why are we just learning about this? And she just looked at me and said, what is it that you're going to do in the short amount of time that we're here that is going to impact these people? You don't even know what the core issue is. We cannot fix their problems for them. And it was like, wow, okay, I got my answer. I need to think about things differently. So for all my hours and for my final project, I was at the Bridge for Youth, which is a homeless shelter for kids in Minneapolis. This was my mentor, Cherie O'Shields, who actually was a homeless youth herself. And this is where I started to really understand homelessness. So this was before the Safe Harbor Law. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but it's a law where you can't criminalize someone under the age of 18 for engaging in prostitution, because you could get a felony before that law was in place. So we worked a lot with doing outreach with girls who were in the life that you call it, and we worked also in the shelter itself, and doing many things that just completely changed my worldview. I didn't even understand the implications and the surrounding, perpetuating problem that homeless youth really were in our state. And so when I was in my graduate program finishing up, they had asked me at that time, would you consider helping at the Health Commons? And at that time it was called the Nursing Center, and I was like, okay, maybe. I wasn't sure what I was getting into. I had no idea I was actually going to be teaching. I thought I was just helping at the Health Commons. But this is a picture of one of our Health Commons locations. So this one's at Central Lutheran Church, downtown Minneapolis. And the population that mostly comes here is, we would say, marginally housed or unsheltered. And so we've been having students come here for close to 35 years now. So this was actually a picture taken during COVID. We were one of the first vaccine pods for the unsheltered community. So at the same time that nurses and doctors could get vaccines, so could the unsheltered community. So we partnered with the Minnesota Department of Health and Hennepin County, and I drove out in my car. My husband doesn't need to know this, and I would ask people if they wanted to come back and get a vaccine. Most people just wanted to come back and get a shower or food. And so anyhow, this is kind of a picture of one of those spaces to kind of unpack the model itself. So the model itself, at the core of it is, and I wouldn't say it's just students, it's volunteers, it's faculty. It's really trying to learn to decode structures of oppression that exclude individuals from discovering means of health. And I think that's really important as it grounds us in all that we do, especially as we grow and expand and have so many new people involved. But the model itself was created in 2009 by students and faculty, and we really wanted to name why it was different. I think at the beginning when we created it, I wasn't there, but when it was first created, they thought, maybe this will be a place for research, maybe this will be a place for scholarship, and then soon realized that it was meeting people where they're at. And trying to stay in that expert role was really missing out on an opportunity to understand what was happening to some of these ongoing health conditions. So really at the focus of everything we do is hospitality. So we don't come in with an agenda. You don't have to tell us your name. You don't have to have a card. You don't have to have insurance. You just need to say, hey, I want a pair of socks. Can I sit down for a second? So it's really trying to think about our human connectedness and, again, meeting people where they're at. And so this might look different depending on what space we're at, but this also might mean just giving people choice. Do you want a black pair of socks or a white pair of socks? Because they might not get choice. They might, everywhere they go, they might feel like a number or push through a line. And so how can we do that differently? So really, as people kind of come in, we try to do our best to acknowledge the need. And so sometimes that might be handing out supplies, it might be handing out a cup of coffee, offering someone to sit down. And so you can really see students and faculty and volunteers when they first start to become involved. There's this like self-awareness that kind of happens of maybe some biases they have. And given that our student body has changed so much, usually when I started, it was a lot of people who maybe were from rural Minnesota, maybe the suburbs, mostly look like me. Now, I would say a lot of our students, I have students who are unsheltered. I have students who are living in the high rises we're in. So it changes and helps me grow too, and helps me understand everybody carries a different set of biases that they've either learned or have helped them survive, right? And so how can we think about that? And then I think students really begin to understand how much care has come with cost, how much the cost of care is, and how hard it is for people to access care sometimes because of the money that is associated with our healthcare system. And then I think too, people start understanding the gravity of the situation. Like, I see that person standing on the corner and, I know homelessness exists, but then actually talking to somebody who is homeless and understanding how that situation came about. So the next kind of thing to think through is attending to that struggle. And so this often is times when people start sharing and start kind of telling us a little bit more of their story. What we try to tell students, especially those of them who are already nurses or already in practice, is like resist trying to fix their problems. We are so socialized to fix people's problems or blame them for their behaviors. So let's just try to suspend our judgment, be in the moment, and understand the structures that are in place that might be causing this issue that's been around for a long time. And I'll get into some examples of this too. And then the supporter of agency. So really thinking about telling people, I can't believe that you're here right now worried about your blood pressure when you don't even know where you're gonna get your next meal, where you don't even know where you're gonna sleep tonight, or you don't know where your loved one is, all the different stressors that come about. And so really trying to acknowledge the creative maneuvers that they have in surviving and really trying to have that mutual relationship start unfolding. And then it leads us to accompaniment. So this is more than advocating for another. This is really where you uplift the other person's wisdom. You upload their strength too. So if you think about a lot of times in school, like I'm a professor, right, of nursing. So empirical data matters, right? We need that to make choices that are driven by evidence. But also we need to think about people's lived reality and the wisdom they have from surviving on the streets, being a new immigrant, living in isolation for one reason or another, depending on which location we're at. So it's really thinking about all forms of knowledge, entering into the plan of care that we walk away with, and really walking alongside somebody where we have a shared level of expertise. So for example, this is a man that we see, he's come in quite frequently. I've known him for 17 years. He lives out on the streets. He has schizophrenia. And he literally one day said, I think I want to get housing. So I was like, okay, let's get you housing. Let's call the outreach team. Let's get you housing and see what that looks like. And because of his schizophrenia, we needed to have somebody, we needed his parents to be involved. And so I called his mom, who lived in California, and she literally didn't know he was alive. So those are some of the stories that you just don't think about. Like, he had gone to college in California, he played football, and all of a sudden had a bipolar or schizophrenic break, you would say, where his personality changed. He stopped going to class, he got kind of aggressive, so he moved to Minnesota to be with his cousins and ended up on the streets. So during COVID, I haven't been able to go back to this as much since some of I've been going through accreditation as the chair, so that's super fun. But we have, over my 20 years with the homeless community, we've spent a lot of time in encampments. Jackie and Tim gave us a lot of donations during COVID in particular, which was amazing. But whenever everything shut down, we had to rethink how we do this. And MDH asked us to be sure to stay open because people aren't going to get food, they aren't going to get water, there's nowhere to go to the bathroom. So how could we think about remaining open and doing things differently? So we spent a lot of time going to the encampments and meeting people where they were at there, which was an experience in itself, but then a whole different experience after the murder of George Floyd. And so being in Minneapolis when things were burning and seeing all the things that were happening when the National Guard was here, those are things I need to unpack maybe with a therapist. I'm just kidding, but it was tough. So anyhow, you can see some of the pictures here of that, and it was really cool just how many people came together. Students donated lots of water. We were all thinking about how do we do this differently and protect ourselves and protect our families and protect the people we care for. This is a student reflection from a student that spent 1.5 years with me. So I think there's a lot up here, so I don't need to go through it all for a sense of, time, but I think one thing that Isaac shared here is making assumptions is dangerous. For example, I heard the story of a woman on the subway who had been sexually harassed. A bystander had asked the woman why she didn't leave this man and stop the abuse. She responded with, "It's better to be raped by one man than 12. Never judge a person's situation or assume to know the dynamics behind their decision making." So I thought that was pretty powerful that this young 21-year-old came up with that. So yeah, he's said I could share these with people, so I can always share my slides too. But so in 2009, and there was a participatory action research done in the Cedar Riverside Plaza buildings right off of 94, those colorful high-rises, and they were with East African immigrant women because their health rapidly deteriorated within the first 5 years of them coming to the country, even though they were connected to services because most of them had refugee status. And so they did focus groups and one-on-one interviews, and they came up with many of these different patterns, which probably don't surprise you. Like, number one was a discordant health belief. So the doctor doesn't even ask me my faith preferences. At home, the first thing the doctor would say is, go read the Quran, take this black seed and come back. But here, no one even asked me if I wanted to pray. Cultural and language barriers, so having a provider who is of the same gender is important to them or knows their family. Sense of time and urgency, so I think, you show up late to the doctor and they cancel you, but you might wait for a half an hour, right? And so not kind of understanding some of that. Class of social or healthcare norms, so those could be many different things, but I think too, a lot of times when people were at home in Somalia, they had something that was treatable. They had tuberculosis, they had malaria, so we'll give you an antibiotic and you feel well. Where here, you're like, you're kind of like pre-diabetic, so let's just take this white pill every day. And they're just like, what? I feel well, why would I take this pill? So we see a lot of people either having lots of prescriptions that they don't take, or maybe they share, or maybe they take it when they don't feel good. So trying to think about that. But anyhow, and then issues around mental health and substance use. There was a lot, especially when we started, and it might still be that way around mental health, being the jinn, an evil spirit. And so you should be ashamed of that and you should pray and not actually get help. And then substance use, which I'd actually say it's gotten worse since that time in the neighborhood. So the people in this research study asked if there'd be a place in the neighborhood free of charge without time constraints and healthcare providers available. And so they knew what we were doing at Central, and so they asked if we would think about starting another health commons in Cedar Riverside. So we did. Dr. Osman Harari, who's the director of community health in Somalia, he was one of the partners as well as a Somali nurse. So we have space for free in the high rises. It was We also, there's lots of different ways to gather information about what is needed, but we decided we were going to sit and wait for people to tell us what they wanted. We didn't want to do a needs assessment. We didn't want to just do more interviews. We wanted to wait for people to ask us to do something with them. And so we did that for 4 hours twice a week, and ended up, we have so much programming now, I can't even name it all, but it started with a walking group, and then we went to gardening, and now we swim where people can go, and a place where the women can swim in a culturally appropriate way. We have food classes. We do food distribution in the neighborhood. My son actually has helped with that. I think he's out in the hallway watching Mom's Too Boring, so he's out watching a show. Oh, you're right here, I didn't see you, I'm sorry. So it's been really a rich experience to be here. We do foot care as well. So that one's been officially open now since 2011. So we also, in 2014, we opened one in North Minneapolis. So this is at the living room at Redeemer Lutheran. So this population, again, looks very different, but it is a fun one to go to. There's lots of lively stories being told. We have massage, we have aromatherapy, we have a nurse on site, do lots of education classes. I think a cool thing about the model too is all of them have what we call bilingual community liaisons. So we don't hire anyone for translating, we don't hire a community outreach worker, we hire somebody from the community. So sometimes they might not speak the best English, so I've had to learn a lot of Somali, but that's okay, right? And so hiring somebody from the neighborhood to help us with recruitment, with understanding what the problems are, with building trust with the neighborhood. So that's been a really fun part of the aspect. So all of them function through community academic partnerships. So Central Lutheran and Augsburg are the one at Central, and then we partner with Health Fairview for many of our other sites, and sometimes other nonprofits as well. So some of them are federally funded community clinics, churches, and coalitions. So this is our newest one. This is Health Commons East. So this is on the east side of St. Paul, literally not far from here. We were just here earlier today. So you can see that the mayor was there when we had our grand opening, so that was super fun. So that one looks different as well. So we do a lot of foot care. We're part of the food distribution, and hopefully going to be more connected with the youth that are there as well at some point in time. It kind of limits us because we're in a building that the youth from the neighborhood aren't so much in, but the youth coming from outside use the bubble. So we're trying to get ourselves into the building where the youth from the neighborhood really are. And then our space is used by many other classes. So we have interfaith scholars that are involved. So sometimes we have class. So this is one night we had the interfaith scholars come, and we had 2 of the people from the unsheltered community come and present to them about what they cared about around religion and health. And then we've had Imam Sharif, who's a leader in the Cedar Riverside neighborhood, work with the students. So that's been really fun. So this is kind of the timeline. We actually used to have one in Rochester as well, but that closed during COVID, and we haven't had a faculty member there who could really reestablish opening that. And then we also have a more recent one that's in a pilot phase at Women of Nations. So it's in St. Paul at a shelter for women who have been in inter-partner violence. And right now, that one, the need seems more like the women need to establish a sense of trust. I think that's a huge thing that I've heard from the community is they don't really trust healthcare providers. And so how can we help reestablish that trust? So I had to update my numbers because we're going to 2 different conferences this week. So 3,000 total students, non-repeat, 100,000 care visits since we've been open, and over 120,000 pairs of socks. Bombas gives us socks, so Bombas is the real deal. If you hear about Bombas, which is really exciting. So a little bit about student learning. So students we've done a couple different research projects on this. The first one really was students are really learning about self-reflection. I think about myself, right? And where I started at Hill, even we had, for one of our classes, we could deliver food for Meals on Wheels, right? We could tutor. We could do all these things in the community that I thought were really cool. So thinking about who we are and what we want to be. Connecting again on that human scale, thinking about those relationships based on mutuality, and then really developing skills to make needed change. It doesn't mean you need to be a politician. It doesn't mean you need to run for office. It means you can just make everyday changes right here. And what does that look like? And sometimes that means not polarizing each other, not getting into the rhetoric of oversimplifying somebody for their opinions, but really being able to have hard conversations and learn more. And then we did also a survey with students. It was the diversity and oppression scale, and so we invited students to participate in that. And the main one that they flagged was, I heard that many people with lived experience share their obstacles seeking care with me directly. I've been encouraged to think about how I could possibly create a more just and equitable society or need a change in healthcare. So that was kind of interesting. We also did where we had interns journal and took away themes from the journals. And this was with graduate nursing students. So the magnitude of connections one can make with a stranger in a short period of time were really meaningful to a lot of the students, really trying to understand the complexity of homelessness and also how much healthcare providers really don't understand. I know when I worked in the ICU, we'd have people come in liver failure. And I know that people, and myself too, you're strapped for time, and it's even worse now, the patient-nurse ratios, and you're like, here comes in a liver transplant, and it's because he was living at the wet house, right? And we're gonna give him a liver, and his girlfriend's gonna come in, and she's gonna ask for 2 trays and smell like smoke, and here we are again, and they'll probably be back. Like some of those like quick blink reactions that are embedded in the norms in healthcare at times, and then not understanding or even having the time to ask, what happened? What happened? He grew up in foster care. He never had unconditional love. And then we're gonna blame him for this? Those are some of the things that now looking back, just make me more grounded in why this is important, and thinking about how to do things differently. So I'll kind of come back to some of these themes too. So we worked with this group called Street Voices of Change as well. So they're an advocacy group of all people with lived experience of homelessness. And so this was after COVID. And we asked them, hey, we could apply for this grant. What would you guys want to research? Let's develop this together. And so they wanted to talk about structural inequities that they faced when seeking healthcare. And so it was really fun. We did 17 interviews in the end. And it was probably not the best research method, because some people wanted to do oral histories because then everybody can hear it and you know exactly what they said, where other people wanted it confidential and didn't want anyone to know what they said. But we wanted to make sure we were being authentic in our co-creation of what we were doing, and so we said, let's just do it this way. And so we found lots of interesting things. And so with the interviews, we never asked one single question about trauma. It was fascinating. The number one thing that came about was a barrier to seeking healthcare was trauma. So it was that toxic stress. I got my backpack stolen. I got beat up last night. I watched somebody get beat up last night. I don't know where I'm gonna be. People bullying each other or being unkind, just constant things like that. Lack of trust and safety in the healthcare system. So one guy was talking about how he just wanted the curtain open in the ED, but they would only close it. And he felt so unsafe when he was all by himself, and he just wanted it open, and they wouldn't keep it open, so he left. Loss of housing. So thinking too about that competing priorities, right? When you don't have a home. So sometimes health, what's my priority, right? And finding food and shelter is impeding to that. So then we went one step further, and we did create a survey and ask people a few more questions to understand. And I think we thought we'd have people saying they didn't have a cell phone, or they didn't have transportation, or it was too hard to get an appointment because everyone's behind and 3 months out. But again, that I'm exposed to violence or trauma came out right at the top. I feel like, and then so that comment was, I feel like I couldn't tell my healthcare providers about my religious beliefs. The other theme that came up quite a bit too was really, I'll share the story, is really this, people said no one asked them about what they wanted at end of life. So nobody was asking them their wishes if they were to die. And there's been people who are scared by that too, because there's just a new research study out like 2 years ago saying that if you're living in an unsheltered life, you're 20 times more likely or 20 years more likely to die earlier than somebody who's housed the same age as you. And so during that time, this is Robin, and so Robin was somebody that's been coming into the Health Commons for as long as I've been there, and she was a pistol. She was so much fun. She had a squirrel named Nuts that she had in her carrier that she would bring to all the different places, and she'd always walk in and say, "Hey, beautiful, what's happening?" Just always very positive and engaging. But during this research time, she was living in the encampments, and she was selling herself. Her boyfriend was actually the one selling her, and there was a fight, and he injured her, and she ended up with a massive infection. So Pastor Melissa, who was at Central, and myself had no idea, but we were written down as next of kin. So we ended up at the hospital and having the palliative care discussions and deciding what we were going to do, and we ended up extubating her, and she passed. But to me, and she's the same age as me, but she had, deep wounds from her growing up life, and was drinking quite a bit. And anyhow, so we had to make that choice. So right now we're in the middle of trying to come up with a program where people can write down what they want, so I know what they want. And hopefully it's not me all the time, because I don't think my husband wants me going to the hospital all the time when everyone's in there. But at the same time, it's meaningful too to be part of the community. And so that was a really tough one. So for me, some lessons that I've learned is really never judging anything, no matter where I'm at. There's always more to it, and it's something that's easier to do, is to make a snap judgment than it is to really think about holding that judgment. And then that knowledge is fluid, it's not fixed, and things change over time. Humility, if you don't have humility, it's going to be really hard to do a lot of these things. And then being uncomfortable with being ambiguous. There's no control in the spaces. We don't know who's going to show up. We don't know who's been in an argument somewhere else and how that's going to show up here. But also knowing that we need to make it ambiguous and not defined if we're really going to co-create the space with the people that are there. Health is membership, so you can have a sense of belonging and health, even if you have stage 4 cancer. It's not about the absence of disease. It's really about having that belonging. And that's what I see across all of them, this deep theme of social isolation. And that's perpetuating, that's getting worse, unfortunately. And letting go when it's not working. So not just keep doing something because we started it. And again, knowing there's always more to it. So awards and recognition. So Fairview just won the Foster McGough Award. One hospital system in this country wins every year, and they won it for 4 of their programs, and one of it was for the Health Commons, so that was really exciting. We've gotten different grants from MDH, UCare, Thrivent, Campaign for Action, the Future of Nursing, Campus Compact. We're going to be winning an award in Baltimore at Kumu, and then we are going to win the Nursing Innovation and Education award from the American Association of Colleges and of Nurses. So that's the main accreditor of nursing programs. So we get to get up on stage in front of 800 deans and chairs and get that award we're really excited about. And all this doesn't happen without a shared community. I don't do this by myself. There's no way I do this by myself. So this is the president of the university. He came out with me during COVID and handed out food. He went to one of the encampments where there was a shooting the day before, and I said, please, we cannot go there. And he's like, no, I'm going, I'm committed. And I said, let's just put the food by the side here, like the sidewalk, and don't go into the encampment. And I turned around, and he was in the encampment handing out food. I was like, oh my gosh. But he's just committed to this. And so that means a whole lot. And then I have people here today who are students and faculty members who are part of this, and then people who have volunteered or donated. So it really is a community that makes this all happen. And I just am lucky that I've been here the longest, so doing this work. But I think it's really interesting thinking back at Hill too, about the leaders here. So Miss Skinner was my teacher in 9th grade, and we had a great time at the award ceremony reconnecting with her. But she also taught me that religion isn't just about believing in one system or in one way, but it's really about caring for everybody. And so I think I learned that here at Hill. And I was looking at the website, and I was so drawn by this idea of calling, and that is something that Augsburg very much talks about too. So I feel very lucky that my parents chose to send me here. This is just one of my favorite quotes. So darkness cannot drive out darkness, only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate, only love can do that. So that's it. So any questions? Yes.
Are there other inner city universities doing what you're doing?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So yes and no. So I think what's unique about what Augsburg's doing is they don't send the students out to do something and then report back to the faculty. They pay for the faculty to go with. So you do it with your faculty members. So we prep and then we debrief. So my one thing, I will not do this unless we have to debrief, because sometimes you can go to a soup kitchen and prepare a meal and the students walk away, but what are they walking away with if you don't sit down and talk to them about it? It might actually be reinforcing stereotypes or missing the purpose of what you're doing. And so it's very unique that Augsburg pays for a faculty member, many of us, to be there doing this work. Yeah. And I think it changes how we teach, right? So I don't teach from a book when it comes to social determinants of health or health equity or whatever the topic might be. I teach from my lived experience being at the Health Commons too. And it kind of teaches you not to take life too seriously either. Yeah.
How are you finding that these experiences are spreading to, or are they spreading to other universities?
Yes, so Mankato has started one, so it's called Health Commons at the Pond. It looks a lot different. It has more funders, so it's very nice. And then they're starting one in Chicago right now, and then we're what is it called? North Park University. We've been talking to them, and then there's a group in Pennsylvania as well, so that are all trying to use the model in their areas. Yeah.
Well, this fraud in the soil, will that affect your program and your programs that you people do?
What was the first part?
The fraud.
Fraud.
Oh, I don't know. That's a really good question. What is impacting what I've seen is the changes in how they're providing food stamps. And we've had 3 community meals in Minneapolis stop providing meals in the last month. And they're talking about in the new year that a lot of these changes are happening even around. So in Minnesota we have housing first, so you can get housing before you have to go into recovery, and they're talking about getting rid of that. We also have wet houses where people who have been drinking for a long time can be housed in group residential housing, so it's actually cheaper for taxpayers because they're not going in and out of hospitals or detox or jail. They're housed in a place where it's kind of like a hospice for people who can't stop drinking. They have to go to detox like 200 times and failed treatment like 12. But they're talking about maybe not funding those anymore. And so some of the stressors are real and we feel it. I think the biggest thing that I feel when I'm in Cedar Riverside is knowing the whole issues around ICE. And that's real for them, and when anything happens, people get very panicked. And for us on campus too, we have to have these conversations. And now we're having conversations about what we do if there's a shooting. I mean, so it's just drastically changed, and we're having conversations I never thought that we would have, but we are. Yeah.
So I think it's really great how each one of your centers decides what to do based on what the community wants. That each one of them is doing something different, and that's amazing. But who kind of came up with the structure of how you wanted to approach each one? Is that you or you?
Yeah, I think we all try to think about the model and We never get it exactly right, but I think our team tries to work collectively. We have meetings monthly, and just it's hard sometimes, especially when, like, you know, some people might have requirements for for being a nonprofit status, or because of the Affordable Care Act, right? So sometimes Fairview has these data outcomes they have to demonstrate where it might go against collecting data. So we find a different way. So fine, we're not going to take anyone's money when we're giving out food in the neighborhood, but they have to give us a phone number. It doesn't matter what phone number, they could make it up. It's just a phone number they're going to use every time, so we know if they're repeat or not. So we have to have some of those hard conversations and be open with that tension, because it does exist and we don't always get it right, you know, but we try. Because it could shift really easily into being a clinic. And it was originally called a nursing center, and a lot of the nursing centers ended up becoming federally funded community centers. So they ended up needing funding from the government to have third-party billing, and we decided to stay grounded in, you know, Central is the main one in charge of the funding, and what we have donated is what we have. And if we don't have it donated, we have some grants that are flexible, but if we go after a grant that's like a 5-year grant and we decide what the community wants, then it kind of changes us from being grounded in what we want to be grounded in. But. Mm-hmm.
You started explaining the economics of how this works.
Sure.
You know, grants, donations. What kind of a budget do you have for facilities?
So all the spaces we have are free of rent. So everybody has donated us the space. From Augsburg's perspective, the main thing they pay for is part of my salary. And then Central, we raise money for every year, and we have an endowment that a previous student started too, which is helpful. So we probably spend like $7,000 a year. We get diapers from the Diaper Bank of Minnesota. We get socks from Bombas.
7,000 is all?
Yeah, we get a lot of, so we get Sunday school kids who will make hygiene kits, and then they'll donate the hygiene kits to us. So it's a community, right? The one in Cedar Riverside, the Fairview Foundation gives us money for, so that helps pay for Dr. Osman, and then the BCLs, and then some of our food programs now do cost money.
Would money help?
Money would always help, yes. Yes, money always helps. And so the Cedar River, I am really worried about the food stuff coming our way. I'm really worried about how that's going to impact all of us. I'm really worried how that's going to impact Fairview. But yeah, of course, money always helps. So we just had an MDH grant for $160,000 for 18 months, and we worked on infant health in the neighborhood. And so that was so fun to like have all these birthing classes, and one of our current faculty members is a midwife, and they would have birthing celebrations that were supposed to be like an hour, where they gave out cribs and stuff, and it would be like 3 hours of the women dancing in Baramba style, which is like a traditional Somali style. I mean, and just having gathering space for the women to do those things, because it is said, I don't know that I've ever found the documentation for it, but that area, that 4-block radius with all the high rises, is the most condensed area between Chicago and LA. And I actually believe it. There's not a lot of green space. And so, yeah, each one's quite different. Yeah, the Central location's not a lot, but yeah, Fairview probably gives us, I don't know how much, maybe $50,000 a year for all the different locations. Yeah, we try to think about, and the biggest thing for me that I try to think through is sustainability. We're not going to start something we can't keep doing. So we have to have those hard conversations. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How do you structure the nursing degree program with so many variable classes?
Yeah, so I should have mentioned that. So we have nursing students, we have social work students. So I have 2 social work students that are in the undergrad program that are with me for 500 hours this year. I know, they're so amazing. I actually think I might be a social worker and not a nurse. I love being with them. But anyhow, and so we have PA students, we have the PsyD program is going to start having students, and then we have lots of students from the undergrad. So they can choose online to sign up for any of them. And some of them are part of classes, and some of them are just if you want to come. And then if students come for 45 hours, they can get a certificate, or they can say they did an internship in health equity and transcultural nursing, and then the president signs it and they can put it on their resume.
So do you also offer 2-year and 4-year?
So our nursing program is an RN completion program, so they're already 2-year RNs. And then we have graduate programs, so we have a master's We have a postmaster's DNP, so a doctorate in nursing practice, and then we have a family nurse practitioner program. We want to start an undergrad program, but getting clinicals for undergrad is really tough in this state, and so it's something we're talking about, but I'm pausing with this accreditation stuff happening and seeing where the clinicals go. Yes, Mr. Moorhead.
We're clearly an inspiration. So, but how can we, if we want, how can we help?
Yeah, well, I think you've helped a lot. I think sometimes doing, whether it's donating for Give to the Max. Right now, underwear is our biggest problem. And so, like, if we had a lot of money, I could buy a lot of underwear. But right now, we put out so much every day because lack of access to showers is still a problem post-COVID. And so people are in the same underwear for a really long time. So everybody wants clean underwear. But yeah, I mean, you could donate, you could volunteer, you could also make hygiene kits with your grandkids, supporting people like you do. How you doing, Katie? I know you're in the encampments. What can we gather for you? What else? What else can do? I think those are all main things, but yeah.
So what's the name for Give to the Max?
Give to the Max, it's Augsburg will do Give to the Max. So it's Augsburg Central, or it'll be Augsburg Health Commons. So, and I can always share the link with Judy, but I also, want this to be an opportunity to give to Hill Murray too. So I know I don't need to steal money from Hill Murray. Yes.
So the clinic is on the east side.
Mm-hmm.
I was looking at it on the website. It looks like it's open 2 days a week,
Mm-hmm.
pretty limited hours. What extent, how much medical care are you able to provide there?
Yeah.
School nurse in St. Paul, I'm just wondering.
Yep.
What kind of services could we expect to tell families they can receive?
Sure, yeah, and a lot of it really is more from like a social work mindset of connecting people to resources, reestablishing that trust with a nurse. Amy is our lead there, and so lots of times it's foot care. We have a lot of people coming in. Foot care is not covered by a lot of different insurances now, and so to get podiatry is pretty impossible, so we've extended to doing more foot care. That's also been a need from the community, so I'm certified as a foot nurse now, not a dream, but we're here. So anyhow, so we do that, and then we have the food distribution, but East is really something that we're kind of still trying to grow and be at, but we would do blood pressures, kind of what the community asks for. But again, we're not doing labs, we're not assessing, we're not trying to treat, we're really trying to help people connect to those services because they're available and not replicate them, but also just kind of meet them where they're at. Like, here's what we're seeing and here's what we can do. It's a good question, because yeah, I think, but it is funny because some of our community members won't go to the hospital. So I mean, I've probably done things I shouldn't do. Somebody got stabbed and they wouldn't go to the hospital, and I had to, do my best to take care of his stab wound, or they won't take stitches out, so I take the stitches out, or there's no protocol. The other day, Fiona and I had somebody come in who was intoxicated, and we knew he needed to go to detox, and he went take an ambulance, and he wanted me to drive him, and I said, we'll walk you there. So we walked him. He didn't make it all the way till later that day, but we walked him part of the way to detox, just trying to respect his agency, but also know it wasn't safe for him to be alone. And so what can we do in that moment? And we had enough volunteers that we made that choice.
The other thing I was going to ask was the hygiene kits. Do you have specific things that you want put in those? Do you have a list somewhere?
Yeah, we do have a list, and then you can always email me too, but yeah, anything really, travel size, soap, shampoo, conditioner. If you put a towel in there, people think it's like the best thing ever. I think the other thing is a lot of times when people make hygiene kits, they go with the cheapest thing they can get, and that's the same stuff they have in jail. And so then people are like, I don't want this deodorant. It's like really traumatizing to me because it reminds me of jail. But so any nicer things too are really nice. I know things I never thought about, right? No, okay.
How do you, as a nurse, your mindset is probably to fix the person in front of you. How do you reconcile your first instinct is to try and fix, and knowing that you can't?
Yeah. I think that was, so when I first started, I'll never forget when I called my dad and told him I got the job and what the pay was, and he might have had a choice word for me. And I hung up on him and said, I'm gonna call somebody who's gonna be happy for me. But at the same time, I was working in the ICU because I couldn't make ends meet on my own when I was single then. And so I worked 2 jobs, and it was really hard to go back from the ICU where there's protocols and there's ways of doing things and there's an understanding to this person, you know, the person I was telling you about. We can't get him housing. I have to call his mom. We have a lot of nurses who are practicing at Mayo, and we have an overdose, and they don't know what to do, right? We can't call a code. There's no right or wrong, and sometimes they're slow to respond at places that are a shelter, depending on, and there's a lot going on in Minneapolis too, so it sometimes takes the police a while. So what do we do in those moments, right? So I think it's really, for me, been unlearning what I learned. And I learned that at Augsburg, going through the programs of really, you can't fix the problem. You can try to name it and say it in a way that people maybe can hopefully understand. So when we're having these conversations about what we can do, hopefully we can give some lived experiences to those things, or, you know, allow ourselves to authentically show up too. Because I think sometimes we think it's unprofessional to share how we got in these spaces or the harms that we've had. So being okay with sharing some of those too. But it's a really good question. And
What does a good day look like?
a good day. Well, one, having enough students, so I'm not by myself, but even those days I grab somebody from the community and say, who wants an extra pair of socks? And then, yeah, just having people come in, and really, it's really fun. Every Monday, people usually come in, and you know, you always have off days or somebody who's maybe mentally unwell, but just, how's it going? How are you doing? How are your kids? Can I get some cough drops? I had this thing happen I really want to talk to you about. And then just seeing how much the community or the students enjoy it too. And then being able to talk about those things afterwards. How does this connect to your class? How does this connect to what you want to do in your profession? And what are you going to take away with you? That I think that's super important, because you could think about what's happening at the Health Commons and have that be meaningful for your life. But then how does that mean something for you as a profession when it might be so different than what it's like in practice? So trying to make students and faculty and myself and volunteers make that connection of like, okay, you see this here, but how does that show up when you're in the hospital? Are we labeling them as aggressive and non-compliant because they feel unheard and maybe they're swearing, or we touch them without asking? Like, I can't tell you how many people have been like, when you've been beat up or raped or have different life experiences, and we go in and we're like, I'm gonna look at your armband, but we don't say that, we just grab their armband. How that just triggers them, and they can't settle themselves down after that. And I never thought about that. You know, I never thought about that. So we've taken students to some places where they can hear from women who have been in the life they say to say, what does trauma-informed care mean? We all talk about it, but what does it mean to you? When you were in the life, what would that look like? Give us some descriptions, because we need to know. Because the way people show up sometimes are those patients that the nurses think are hard to deal with. But there's usually more to it. And again, the healthcare system has changed a lot, so it's hard to get those conversations, because the cuts happen, you know, at the ground level, and the nurses are really having to have more patience and responsibilities, and they're burning out pretty quick. So a lot of nursing programs are actually struggling to reach their numbers. Our FNP program actually had a wait list, which is kind of unique, but I think the draw to our immersions, so we do immersions globally, like I was telling you that I did. Our orientation, we go to the Black Hills and meet with Lakota elders who teach us about Lakota health practices, and then we climb Black Elk Peak and spend time together. So I think students kind of are drawn to that different way of looking at healthcare, but there are a lot of programs now where it's like the Netflix of education, you know, and it's like, well, you can get it done easy and quick, I guess, or you can come to Augsburg and hike, I don't know, but yeah. Yes, Jackie.
So Katie, thank you for this work that you're doing. And I think in this, right now in our history, in the United States, it's even, there's so many misperceptions about how a person becomes unhoused. Mm-hmm. And when people don't look like us, there's a lot of misperceptions. And so, but what really is effective is, I think you know, is telling people's stories. parts. So do you have many opportunities like this to tell individual stories, because those are so important, rather than, other than award ceremonies?
Yeah, and that's all new for us. Yeah, that's like, wow, okay, this is happening. I feel like it happens a lot in the classroom. But yeah, I'm always open, and sometimes I'm real careful about which stories I tell too, just based on, protecting their privacy. But no, I feel like I do, and I feel like some of them are so powerful. Like, I just think about, now that I'm a mother, how many people lose their kids, and I can't imagine the pain that would cause, whatever the cause of you losing your children would be, but the perpetual pain after that, So some of these things are just really unreal, and sometimes it's hard for me. I think most of the time I do okay, but there's definitely days where I'm calling my friend Amy over here and saying, I can't shake this one today. This one was tough. So yeah, definitely have those things happen.
Do you have to work around the clock?
If my husband were to answer that question, he would say yes. But no, we have a big team that all helps with all of this, so we're able to all take a part in that and support one another. So yeah.